Welcome back to the Sleepy History Club. Tonight, we're drifting into the cold, coal-dusted fog of Victorian London, a city where simply surviving until dusk was considered an accomplishment. Forget the polished tales of top hats and royal carriages. This is not the London of Sherlock Holmes or palace garden parties. This is the London of soot-stained windows, rooms that drip with questionable moisture, and streets that challenge your will to exist. So settle in, dim the lights. Let the hum of the fan mimic the whisper of a gas lamp flickering in a forgotten alley. Wrap yourself in warmth, and prepare to travel back to a time when comfort was a myth, and misery came standard. You open your eyes to the twitch of your brother's foot, dangling mere inches from your face. His toes, blackened by weeks of barefoot errands, twitch in restless dreams beside the crumbling edge of a straw-stuffed pillow. This is not your room. It is the room. The only one. A single rectangular reality you share with 6 other souls. There is no privacy, no separation, no designated corner. Just a warped floor that creaks warnings, a ceiling that weeps unidentifiable liquid, and walls that once held wallpaper, now faded into ghostly silhouettes of better intentions. One bed exists, though calling it a bed is generous. It groans under bodies each night. The mattress a collapsing quilt of straw and sweat. 2 chairs lean against each other for stability, and there's a rat you've named Thomas. He's lived here longer than you, and arguably pays more attention to everyone's schedule. The bucket in the corner serves a triple purpose: lavatory, emergency water source, and, in especially bleak moments, a place to rinse your socks. The air smells of mildew and ambition gone stale. You've trained yourself to breathe through your mouth. You rise, but you don't stand. Not immediately. Rising too fast might wake the aches in your back, or someone else's temper. The morning ritual is delicate. You and your family swap spots around the wash basin like a grim game of musical chairs. Someone always spills it. Someone always swears. And someone always steps in something wet that should never be wet. The only window is more suggestion than function, choked with soot and fog so thick it seems to eat light. Beyond it, a narrow alley where a butcher dumps refuse and a neighbor's goat watches you with judgment in its eyes. And still, this place is yours. You know which board creaks just before someone enters. You know the sigh of the kettle when it gives up boiling. You know the scent of damp straw better than your own reflection. It is not home, but it is where your story begins. And as you pull on your stiff boots, wrap your scarf around your mouth to filter the soot, and nudge Thomas gently off your path, you prepare to meet the day. Because out there, the fog breathes, the streets groan, and the city, ever hungry, waits to see if you'll make it through another sunrise. You blink slowly, your breath a thin cloud in the morning air, and pull your threadbare shawl tighter around your shoulders. Outside the wooden door, the streets of Victorian London stretch like a grim gauntlet. You step into the day not with purpose, but with resignation, greeted instantly by a blast of cold, damp air and the unmistakable scent of something burnt, something rotting, and something that probably used to be food. You don't ask questions here, not of the smells, not of the sounds, especially not of the stains. Your boots, if you can call them that, are mostly holes with laces, slipping through puddles that are less water and more historical soup. The street is a patchwork of mud, soot, and suspicious liquid that defies categorization. Above, a gray sky presses down like a leaden lid, sealing the city in a slow-cooked stew of coal smoke and unfulfilled dreams. Welcome to the market, or rather, what Victorian London considers a market. It's not so much a place of commerce as a shouting match with vegetables. Barrows line the narrow road, each one manned by a vendor louder than the last, competing not just in price, but in volume and vague threats. "Best apples this side of Shoreditch," one bellows, though the apples in question appear to be at war with mold. "2 halfpence for the eels, Livish," another croaks, holding up something that might once have wiggled. You navigate the chaos slowly, eyes downcast, ears trying to filter the shrill from the merely aggressive. Somewhere, a child screams, not in pain, just because. A man in a stovepipe hat slaps a cabbage with the grim authority of someone who has done this before. A woman offers you a pear with a look that says she'll fight you if you done to buy it. The air is thick with life, and by life, we mean germs. Coughs echo between stalls like morbid percussion. Phlegm is a shared language. You're not sure what day it is, but judging by the smell, the fish on display arrived 3 days ago and never left. And yet, somehow, there's beauty in it. A strange, tragic beauty. The red of the beetroot bleeding into burlap sacks. The shimmer of soot on a puddle as a cart rumbles past. A butcher sings a sad, off-key tune as he saws through something unidentifiable. You pass a bread seller with loaves so dense they could be used for structural support. You nod politely. Bread like this doesn't deserve eye contact. A young boy offers you meat pies from a tray slung around his neck. You decline, not out of suspicion, but out of sheer emotional fatigue. Victorian meat pies are less meal and more riddle. Everywhere you look, there is movement. Not progress, just movement. A man with a cart full of coal shouts at a horse that looks ready to unionize. An old woman sweeps her stoop, not because it helps, but because routine is the only armor against despair. The city hums, a dull, rattling hum, like a machine no one remembers building, but everyone must live inside. You keep walking. Past the market, past the yelling, into streets that narrow into alleys, alleys that reek of secrets and boiled cabbage. Children dart past you, some barefoot, some with shoes several sizes too large, all with the hollow joy of those who have learned to laugh before the city can take it from them. One of them sticks his tongue out at you, then disappears into a crack between buildings. You're not even mad. That was the most honest interaction you've had all morning. And then, just as you're adjusting to the rhythm of it all, the grime, the noise, the quiet panic behind every transaction, it starts to rain. Not a heavy, cleansing rain. No. A misty, half-hearted drizzle that accomplishes nothing except making everything colder and slightly more miserable. The cobblestones glisten. The smells intensify. The bread gets soggier. You sigh and you walk on. Because in Victorian London, there's no such thing as waiting for better weather. This is the weather. This is the mood. Somewhere, a bell chimes the hour. You don't know which one. It doesn't matter. The day doesn't care what time it is, only that it keeps going. So you do too. One foot in front of the other, eyes half-lidded, head low, through a city that doesn't love you but won't let you go either. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. By midday, though the sun hasn't really shown up to confirm that, it is time to think about lunch. Though lunch is a generous word. In Victorian London, it's more of a negotiation between hunger and whatever your hands, or someone else's, can produce for the price of a copper coin or a convincingly pitiful stare. You duck into an alley for a moment of false quiet. The sounds from the main street dim, replaced by the slosh of something dripping into a puddle and the echo of a boot scraping against stone. The wall beside you is warm, not from sunlight, but from the bakery on the other side. You lean against it, inhale, and for a fleeting second, it smells almost like bread. Real bread. Not the crusted shame from this morning, but a loaf someone might actually want to eat. But you can't afford that bread, so you do what you always do. You dream it instead. A vendor shuffles past, dragging a handcart with a wheel that squeaks in a way that feels almost personal. He's selling meat pies again. Same boy from earlier, now louder, and the pies are even more confident in their mystery. Hot pie, get it while it's not too old, he calls. You consider it. You look at the crust. It looks back. Instead, you opt for something safer, a potato. Boiled, battered, maybe fried in oil that last saw the sun during the reign of William IV. But it's hot, and right now, heat is currency. You wrap your hands around it, letting the warmth soak into your fingers, pretending for just a second that you're somewhere else. Somewhere with tablecloths. Somewhere with chairs. You take a bite. It burns your tongue. You feel grateful for the pain. It's the most honest sensation you've had all day. Around you, others eat quickly, standing, hunched over like question marks. No one sits. There is nowhere clean enough. A man beside you gnaws on a hunk of gray meat. It might be pork. It might be ambition. It doesn't matter. The street is alive again now. Afternoon has arrived with its usual cast of characters. Chimney sweeps blackened to the bone. Factory girls with pinched faces and hands like rawhide. Newsboys shouting about scandals that most people can read and wouldn't to believe if they could. You walk through them like fog. Or rather, through fog that's been heavily seasoned with ash and industrial guilt. Your stomach, slightly less hollow now, settles into its afternoon rhythm. A dull ache instead of a sharp cry. A blessing of sorts. You pass a tailor AS shop where a boy no older than 10 stitches buttons with the focus of a man twice his age and half his hope. His fingers bleed. He doesn't flinch. That's just Monday. In the next window, a cobbler snoozes behind a stack of shoes that look more like crimes than footwear. No one wakes him. Rest is too rare to interrupt. A group of women stands at the corner, buckets at their feet, faces drawn. Laundresses, maybe. Or wives of dock workers waiting for news about a crate that fell, or a man who didn't make it home last night. The only certainty is that they're waiting. In this city, everyone is waiting for something. An extra shift, a better meal, an escape, however brief. You feel the fatigue in your bones. It's not just physical, it's atmospheric. Victorian London doesn't just exhaust you. It seeps into you, coats your insides like soot on a window pane. Every breath is a compromise. And then there's the sound. Not music, never music, but a composition nonetheless. Hooves clatter over stone. A baby cries in the distance. Someone coughs so hard it sounds like they're unspooling. A constable yells at a boy who may or may not have picked a pocket. Church bells chime in the wrong key. It is chaos, but it is practiced chaos. Everyone knows their part. You walk slower now. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because you know what's next. The afternoon drags like a wet coat, heavy and suffocating. You'll return to the same street, the same vendor, the same air that smells like rust and wet wool and something no one dares name. But for now, you walk. Past a butcher's shop where blood has dried on the stones. Past a printer whose posters flap like exhausted flags. Past a beggar who thanks you for nothing, because nothing is all you have. And as the fog thickens again, swallowing the skyline and turning gaslights into ghost lights, you realize something. You survived the morning. That's more than most. By now, the gray has deepened. Not just in the sky, but in your bones. It's as if the city is settling into its own skin, sighing under the weight of another endless afternoon. And you've made it past the choking fog, past the grit of half meals and mud-laced alleys. Now comes the next part of your Victorian adventure. Work. Or, to be more accurate, survival disguised as productivity. You trudge toward your place of employment. That phrase feels generous. Place of employment. As if the building welcomes you. As if the job nurtures you. As if this city, at any point, cares whether you live through the shift. Let's be honest. It doesn't. The factory looms before you. Its brick walls stained with smoke and something darker. Its windows are permanently fogged, either with steam or regret, depending on the hour. Inside, it is loud. A cacophony of clanking metal, shouting foremen, and the unrelenting hum of machines that never seem to stop, even when someone's sleeve, or someone's hand, gets caught. The air smells of iron, sweat, and oil thick enough to coat your teeth. There is no real beginning to the shift. No warm welcome, no morning briefing, just noise, and bodies. Bent, broken, bent again. You step into your station and immediately start moving, because if you stop, even to cough, even to blink, someone else will take your place. Or worse, shout at you for pretending to be tired. You're not allowed to be tired. Tired is a luxury. The hours blur. You haul, you lift, you sew, you solder, you do whatever needs doing. And if your fingers bleed or your eyes sting, you blink it off and keep going. Beside you, a boy barely tall enough to reach the machine works without complaint. He's been here since before dawn, or since before he was a child. It's hard to tell. In Victorian London, childhood ends as soon as you can carry a bucket. The foreman paces like a prison guard, barking orders with the cheerful energy of a man who hasn't done a day of labor in a decade. If you drop a tool, you're shouted at. If you sweat too much, you're told you're unclean. If you sweat too little, you're accused of laziness. There is no correct temperature for existence. Lunch break arrives. Not that it matters. You sit on a crate and chew something that might have been bread, if it hadn't been reheated 3 times and used once as a doorstop. Someone nearby is coughing into a rag. The rag is red. No one says anything. Back to work. The machine roars. The gears grind. A girl 2 rows down screams, just once, then goes quiet. A foreman swears. Someone fetches a cloth. The machine keeps running. There is no pause button in Victorian industry. And for those not in factories, the options aren't much better. Coal haulers, bricklayers, dock workers, mudlarks, street hawkers, rat catchers. Each job comes with its own flavor of misery, each with a unique way to wear down the body, the spirit, or both. Women scrub floors until their hands resemble boiled leather. They sew buttons until their eyes no longer focus. They clean other people's clothes while theirs rot on the line at home. There is no sick leave. There is no pension plan. No one is collecting stamps for your effort. You work until your back gives out. Then you work on your knees. In the corner, a man coughs into his sleeve. He hasn't stopped coughing in 3 months. He calls it the factory lungs. Everyone smiles. It's not a joke. It's just a shared truth that pretending it's funny makes it easier to breathe. By the time the bell rings, or someone says it's time, you're half dreaming on your feet. Your legs hurt in ways you can't explain. Not sore, not injured, just haunted. You step outside and realize the sun has set. Not that it was visible, but the fog has thickened into something more solid, like a wet curtain drawn over the day. Gas lamps flicker to life, casting weak halos of amber across puddles that reflect nothing but soot. You survived the workday. Your reward? You get to do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, until your body gives up before the city does. But for now, you walk home, slowly, carefully, wondering if tomorrow's shift will be better, or if you'll finally be lucky enough to miss it. The walk home should be peaceful. After all, you've earned it. Hours bent over machinery, or hauling coal, or dodging wagons with only a crust of bread to show for it. But this is Victorian London, and the city doesn't believe in rewarding effort. Instead, it punishes you for surviving. The streets are darker now. Not because the sun is gone, though it is, but because the fog has thickened again. The gas lamps flicker helplessly, trying to push light into the haze. Their glow is weak, yellow, and tired, like an old man trying to read by candlelight. And the fog. It isn't the poetic, mysterious kind sung about in novels. No, this is London's famous pea souper, thick as soup, bitter as coal dust, and utterly indifferent to your lungs. You cough. Of course you do. Everyone coughs. It's not a sign of illness. It's just part of the rhythm. Like bells in a cathedral, hooves on cobblestones, or the wheezing groan of a neighbor trying to breathe. You pass a man on the corner, leaning against a lamppost, hacking into a handkerchief that used to be white. He gives you a look that says, "We're both still here," and then disappears back into the mist. You don't know his name, but you know the sound of his cough. You know the smells, too. Oh, the smells. Tonight, it's a special blend. Burning coal, boiled cabbage, wet wool, and whatever's festering in the gutter beside the butcher's. Someone's cooking something that might be soup or might be punishment. And there's always the undercurrent of horse, the manure, the sweat, the inevitability of stepping in something warm and not wanting to know what. You keep walking. The city creaks around you, old wood, metal hinges, tired lungs. Somewhere nearby, someone's arguing over a missing boot. Further down the alley, a baby is crying in that ragged, open-throated way that says it's not the first time. You pass them all like shadows. Because that's what people are here, really. Shadows in the fog. Then, just as you think you've made it, it happens. A flash of movement, a blur, and your coat feels a little lighter. You check your pocket. Gone. Your last copper. Pickpocket. Child, probably. No more than 7. Fast, clever, hungry. You're not even angry. You're almost proud. You'd have done the same. Theft here isn't immoral. It's occupational. You finally reach your tenement. The same cracked brick and peeling door. The same 3 steps that groan under your weight. You pause before entering. Not out of dread. Out of ritual. You prepare yourself for what's inside. Because home, as we said, is not rest. It's just a pause between miseries. You step in, the hallway is damp. It always is. Someone tried to hang a coat on the wall, but the nail gave up halfway, and now it just hangs there like a defeated ghost. The stairs creak as you climb. You avoid the third one. It always snaps. Inside the room, not much has changed. Your brother's foot is still dangerously close to your face. The rat is still alive. The air still smells like shared exhaustion and damp socks. But it's warmer, maybe. Or maybe you've just lost enough sensation to tell. Someone's boiling water. Not for tea. Tea is for the rich. Just hot water, maybe with a bit of old onion floating in it. You take your spot near the wall, wrap yourself in the same scratchy blanket, and try not to think about your back. The fire is fake. The comfort is fake. But the exhaustion? Oh, that's real. And still, this is preferable to what comes next. Because night in Victorian London is something else entirely. The fog doesn't lift. It thickens. The rats come out. The pickpockets sleep, but the real criminals rise. And you will try to rest. Even knowing that rest is temporary, fragile, and often interrupted by neighbors shouting or coughing or arguing over who stole the last of the bread. You close your eyes. Not to sleep, just to pause. Just to pretend you're somewhere else. Because in a few hours, the city will demand you again. And it always takes more than it gives. Morning, if you can call it that, seeps in like a reluctant guest. There's no dramatic sunrise. Just a gradual brightening of the greasy fog outside your soot-streaked window. It's hard to tell where the smoke ends and the daylight begins, if it begins at all. The air is wet again, of course. Not with rain, but with a kind of cold dampness that feels like the city is exhaling straight into your pores. You wake up exactly where you fell asleep. Hunched, stiff, on a splintered floorboard, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of coal dust and someone else's dreams. Bad ones. Everyone in the room is waking up too, but no one says anything. Words are expensive. Energy is limited. There's a bucket in the corner and someone already knocked it over. Again. You choose to pretend it didn't happen. Your stomach growls, but not in protest. More like habit. It knows breakfast is coming. And it knows better than to expect anything good. Breakfast in Victorian London is a ceremony of disappointment. If you're lucky, and let's be honest, you're not, it's a piece of bread so hard you could use it as a roof tile. Tea, maybe, if there's any left. Not because it's comforting, but because it's boiled, and things that have been boiled probably won't kill you. Not quickly, anyway. Sugar, butter, jam. Those are rumors from richer districts. Fairy tales whispered in the workhouses. Sometimes there's porridge, sometimes it's gray, sometimes it moves. You learn not to look too closely. One eye on the bowl, one on the rat near the hearth. You both know the game. First to blink loses their portion. No one eats at a table. Tables are for homes. This is a room. A box with walls and complaints, and a single window that fogs over with each breath. You huddle in your corner with your crust and your hopes and chew in silence. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's just tired. If you're lucky, someone nearby works at a bakery. That means you get to smell bread that isn't yours. That's your version of aspiration. Inhaling someone else's breakfast. The scent of warm dough and yeast drifts through the cracks in the walls, mingling with the scent of mold and regret. Eventually, someone speaks. A cough disguised as a greeting. A grunt that could mean move. A shuffle of boots as the dance begins. Who gets the basin first? Who can change their clothes fastest? Who gets to leave early and pretend, just for a moment, that they have somewhere better to be? Outside, the city waits. Smothered in fog. Everything is gray. The sky, the street, your mood. You brace yourself for it, not because you're brave, but because you have no other choice. You step outside. Your boots sink slightly into the sludge, today's mixture of rain, horse manure, and something you're not prepared to identify. You pass a woman selling what might be apples or just particularly shiny rocks. Her cart creaks with each shout. Fresh fruit, 3 for a halfpenny. You know better. You also know she'll still be there tonight, shouting into the mist. Fruit still unpurchased, still unidentifiable. And then there's the workhouse queue. The line is already long. Mostly women, children, the unemployed, the broken, and the forgotten. They stand quietly, staring at nothing, waiting for ladles of lukewarm gruel and judgment. You pass them slowly, carefully avoiding eye contact, not out of cruelty, but because you see yourself in them. One twist of fate, one broken gear in the machine, and you'd be standing right beside them. Street vendors hawk food you can't afford. Meat pies made from something vaguely meat-adjacent. Fried potatoes sizzled in oil that was ancient when Victoria took the throne. It smells like hope. You buy one. You shouldn't. It might kill you. But for a few minutes, it feels like warmth. And warmth is rare. There's no dining room, no newspaper, no soft music playing while you eat. Just the sound of hooves, coughing, and someone shouting about the price of soap. You stand in the fog, chewing, swallowing, breathing in filth, and preparing for what comes next. Because this isn't the end of the day. This is still the beginning. And now, stomach only half full and spirit almost completely empty, it's time for work. Or something resembling it. Victorian London doesn't care about your dreams. It cares about your labor, your output, your ability to keep moving despite it all. You dust off your coat, though it doesn't help, and you trudge forward, into the smog, into the crowd, into whatever the city decides to throw at you next. You don't know what the day will bring, but you know one thing. It will be gray. It will be loud, and it will be long. The streets don't welcome you. They tolerate your presence. Barely. You're not walking to work so much as navigating a battlefield disguised as a city. Victorian London in daylight is no gentler than it is at dawn. It's just louder. It growls beneath your feet and snarls around every corner. You step off the stoop, if your building has one, and immediately your boot sinks into something wet, cold, and suspiciously warm at the center. You don't look down. Eye contact with the street only encourages it. The muck here is a living entity. It pulls at your souls like it wants you to stay. Forever. There are no real sidewalks, not for the likes of you. The wealthier neighborhoods, miles away and metaphorically on another planet, might boast cobbled paths with decorative railings and trees that still have leaves. But here, the pavement is cracked, narrow, and lined with grime so old it might be protected under ancient artifact laws, if such laws existed for the poor. And so, like everyone else, you share the road with the real monsters of the city, the horses and their carts. You dodge a carriage that comes barreling down the center lane as if it's fleeing the apocalypse. The driver doesn't look up. He never does. He knows you'll move. You always do. The law of the street is simple. He has wheels. You have bones. One of you is more replaceable. The mud sprays. You're now carrying a bit of London on your coat, which was already the color of damp cement, and now smells faintly of dead cabbage. You keep walking. You have to. There's a gutter in the middle of the road, open, flowing, and ominous. It carries away the city's sins, vegetable rot, slaughterhouse runoff, laundry suds, the contents of 100 chamber pots dumped with nonchalant precision from second-floor windows. Crossing it requires dexterity and faith. You jump, or you tiptoe across a questionable plank someone laid down 5 years ago and never claimed. Every few feet, there's an obstacle. A boot abandoned with a sock still in it. A dead rat the size of a terrier. A puddle that burps. You wonder not for the first time whether you're still technically clean from that quick wash in the basin this morning. The answer is no. You haven't been clean since 1847. And then there are the people. You're not alone on these streets, unfortunately. There are children, swarming like caffeinated moths, darting between legs, dodging hooves, and laughing with the kind of reckless abandon that only poverty permits. Their clothes are stitched together from memory, and their shoes are theoretical. Some carry rags, others newspapers. One sells chestnuts that he hasn't tasted in months. You spot pickpockets, too. Not always children. Sometimes it's the man leaning too close behind you. Sometimes it's the woman who brushes past and leaves you lighter. You clutch your coat, not because there's anything valuable in it, but because it's yours. And that matters. Vendors shout from carts, pushing eels, kippers, meat of indeterminate origin, and apples that might just be turnips in disguise. They yell louder than anyone should before noon. They hawk their wares with desperation, and you can't blame them. Desperation is the city's dominant currency. A constable strolls past with his truncheon, chin up, eyes blank. He makes no effort to intervene when a man is shoved into a wall over a crust of bread. The constable's presence is ceremonial, like church bells or the fog. He's there to observe, not protect. Someone spits in the gutter. Someone else sings. A dog barks. Or maybe it's a child. The line blurs here, and then it starts to rain, because of course it does. Not a dramatic storm. Just a steady, contemptuous drizzle. The kind of rain that gets into your collar and down your spine before you realize it's begun. It turns the mud to soup. It makes the air feel like a wet cloth pressing into your nose. Umbrellas, if anyone has them, are mostly broken. Used more for status than function. You squint into the gray and trudge forward. You pass a man collapsed near a doorway. No one stops. You don't either. It's not cruelty. It's self-preservation. There's a silent agreement here. If they're not moving, they've either had too much gin or not enough food. Neither of those things are your problem. Until they are. You finally round the corner and your destination comes into view. The factory. Or the docks. Or the coal yard. It doesn't matter which. They all smell the same. Like hot iron, wet rope, and dreams boiled down to their base elements. The day is just beginning. Your body is already tired. Your stomach is still arguing with the potato you inhaled earlier. And your boots? They're plotting mutiny. But you made it. You survived the streets. Barely. As you cross the threshold into your place of work, whatever shape it takes, you take a moment. Not to gather yourself, but to say goodbye to daylight. Because inside, there are no windows, no clocks, no breath of fresh air, only labor, and the sound of gears grinding hope into dust. The factory swallows you whole. Not metaphorically. It genuinely feels like the building eats people. You walk through the doors, and the city's chaos is replaced by something colder, more mechanical. The air is different in here, thicker, heavier. It's the industrial perfume of coal soot, oil, metal filings, and something faintly biological. You try not to think too hard about the last ingredient. Inside, it's not much brighter than the street. A few grimy windows near the ceiling do their best to filter in the gray. But mostly, the factory glows from lanterns and furnaces. The light flickers like it's nervous to be here. You should be too. Your shift begins without ceremony. No greetings, no warm-up. Just the immediate deafening roar of machinery coming to life. Gears churn. Belts snap into motion. Chains clatter like bones. The noise is constant. So constant that you stop noticing it after a while. Or rather, your brain gives up. It knows it's not getting silence back anytime soon. Your job doesn't matter. Maybe you stand at a loom. Maybe you haul crates. Maybe you hammer, stitch, sew, or stir. Whatever it is, it repeats. All day. Over and over. One task, one motion, a rhythm drilled into your body until your muscles perform it without instruction, and your mind drifts somewhere else. Not to relax, but to survive. The foreman shouts something. You nod instinctively. You didn't hear him, but it's safer to pretend you did. He's not cruel, exactly. Just functional. Like a furnace. He exists to make sure the fire stays lit, even if it scorches you. Around you, other workers move with the same vacant urgency. Their faces are blank, slack with exhaustion and repetition. Occasionally, someone coughs, loudly, wetly. No one reacts. It's not an emergency. It's a soundtrack. There's a boy nearby. Maybe 10, maybe 12, depending on how much life's taken from him. He crawls under the machines to clear out the lint, the scraps, the little metallic mistakes. He moves fast. He has to. The machines don't stop for small hands or little limbs. No one talks. Not because you're forbidden, but because there's nothing to say. Conversations died years ago, drowned beneath the thrum of wheels and pistons. What's left are looks, shrugs, gestures, the language of survival. Your hands ache. Your back clenches. Your knees remind you of every ladder, every crate, every slippery floorboard. But you keep going. Not because you're brave, but because if you don't, someone else will. And you can't afford to be replaced. The hours don't pass. They drag. Each minute a pebble in your boot. Lunch, if it comes, is brief and bitter. A hunk of bread, a swig of weak tea. You eat sitting on a crate, staring at the wall, trying not to let your eyes close. If you sleep, you're done for. You've seen what happens when someone dozes on the job. The machine doesn't care. It eats fingers. It eats arms. Sometimes whole lives. Accidents happen, all the time. A hand caught in a press. A foot crushed under a cart. The foreman yells, "Someone is carried out," and the work doesn't stop. It never does. You absorb it. Just like you absorb the fog, the filth, the coughing, and the poverty. London teaches you to digest horror and move on. Outside, the world changes. The sun rises higher, then sinks. The light shifts color, though you can't see it from where you are. Time becomes a theory. You measure your day by the pain in your back, the dryness in your throat, the way your arms refuse to obey you after hour 10. Finally, there's a whistle. Not freedom, just the signal that you're done. For now. You don't cheer, you don't stretch, you just stop. Slowly, as if unsure your body still knows how to not work. You step outside, blinking into twilight. The air is colder now, or maybe you're just sweating too much to notice. Either way, the sky is still gray, the street still wet, and the walk home just as treacherous as the one here. Your clothes are damp with sweat and soot. Your hands shake slightly from the repetition. But you made it. You worked. You survived another day inside the beast. And you'll do it again tomorrow. Because in Victorian London, a job isn't salvation. It's just another way to endure the inevitable. By now, the idea of sleep seems like a myth. A story told by wealthier people in warmer rooms. But if you're a child in Victorian London, sleep is something you steal in pieces. Between coughs. Between chores, between the adult world that presses down on you long before you were big enough to resist it. Childhood here isn't a season. It's a fleeting blur. A short sprint before you're old enough to labor, or small enough to be useful. If you're lucky, you make it to 5 before you're sent to work. If you're not, you're born working. Or rather, born into a world that doesn't pause long enough to give you anything else. You wake not to sunshine or lullabies, but to shouting, clattering, and the smell of damp wool and coal smoke. Maybe you're a chimney sweep, your tiny frame perfect for slipping through tight flues to scrape soot from fireplaces. You climb before breakfast. You cough before you've spoken. And if you get stuck, they prod you from below. Sometimes gently, sometimes not. If you fall, it's chalked up to bad footing, and someone else takes your place. Other children sell newspapers on street corners, their voices hoarse from yelling headlines they can't read. They dart through traffic, dodge boots and carts, and hope today someone buys enough papers for them to afford bread instead of just dreaming about it. Or maybe you're a mudlark, digging through the banks of the Thames at low tide, sifting through mud and waste for anything that can be sold. A nail, a bit of rope, a bone, a broken comb. You go home soaked to your knees in river water and sewage, your fingers pruned and raw but slightly richer, maybe by a penny. Some girls, the match girls, spend their days dipping wooden sticks into white phosphorus. The fumes are sweet and sickening. You don't notice at first, until your jaw starts to ache, then swell, then rot. They call it phossy jaw. You call it normal. And then there are the factories. Low-ceilinged, oil-slicked, thunderously loud. Children crawl beneath moving machinery, sweeping lint, fixing belts, retrieving scraps. You learn quickly. Move fast, stay low, don't cry, and always know where your hands are. If you lose one, there's a queue of children behind you, ready to take your place. For a Victorian child, play is a luxury, and safety is a rumor. Toys are scraps, games are whatever mischief can be made in 3 spare minutes. You might carve a button into a spinning top, chase a rat down the alley for sport, or trade chalk lines on the pavement for a few seconds of joy. No one calls you innocent. No one thinks you're fragile, you're small, and therefore employable. And yet, somehow, amid the soot and the sadness, children find ways to laugh. They form gangs of mischief. They sing songs, often crude, always loud. They invent names for their chores and mock the adults who tower over them. There's defiance in their tiny rebellions, a refusal to be crushed entirely. Not yet. Orphans roam in packs, half wild and fiercely loyal to each other. Those in the workhouses wake before dawn to scrub laundry, sew uniforms, or pick apart old rope for fiber. The food is gray. The walls are gray. The days are endless repetitions of drudgery. But even there, children steal moments of togetherness. They whisper stories after lights out. They pass stolen crusts beneath the covers. They survive. Because in this city, survival is the only thing expected of them. Childhood is not a protected phase. It's a preparatory stage. You are trained in suffering, endurance, and quiet compliance. You are not asked what you want to be when you grow up. You are only reminded that growing up is not guaranteed. But still, they live. Barefoot and bruised, coughing and clever. Children in Victorian London don't flourish. They endure. And somehow they carve joy into the cracks, even as the city forgets them, even as the world expects them to disappear before they matter. Let's say you've survived to adulthood. Miraculous, really. You dodged the chimney sweep's fate, the coughing of consumption, and the wheel of a runaway coal cart. You made it. But don't relax. Being an adult in Victorian London isn't a prize. It's just a longer sentence. And if you're a woman, the sentence is heavier. From the moment you're old enough to carry a bucket, your work begins. If you're unmarried, you might become a domestic servant. That means waking before the household does, scrubbing chamber pots, hauling coal up 3 floors, ironing clothes with blistering metal slabs, and blacking the grates until your nails are permanently stained. You sleep in a cupboard or the attic, eat scraps, and speak only when spoken to. You wear someone else's cast-offs, smile politely through exhaustion, and never, not ever, sit unless invited to do so. If you're married, it gets harder. Because now you serve 2 homes, the one you live in and the one you scrape to maintain. You're expected to cook meals with ingredients you can't afford, raise children with no help, mend clothes by candlelight, and smile through it all. Laundry becomes your second job. Not your own, of course. Laundry from the homes of people richer, cleaner, and more indifferent. You scrub in cold water, boil linens in cauldrons, wring towels until your hands split. Your skin cracks, your back screams, and the steam stings your eyes. Some women become seamstresses, a quiet dignity you might think. But it's 14 hours a day, hunched over in a windowless room, sewing the same buttons, the same cuffs, the same useless pleats. The pay? Pennies. If your fingers bleed on the fabric, you're docked. If you complain, you're replaced. And then there's the match factories. Lovely name, terrible place. You stand for hours dipping sticks into white phosphorus. It's sweet-smelling at first, almost pleasant, until your teeth ache, then rot, then fall out, then your jaw begins to dissolve. They call it phossy jaw. Management says it's your fault. You chewed gum, they say. You breathed wrong. If you're widowed, orphaned, or just unlucky, the street becomes your last option. And there, the work isn't asked for, it's taken. Sex work in Victorian London isn't glamorous, it's desperate. You sell yourself in alleyways, at tavern doors, or in rented rooms where the wallpaper peels and the locks don't hold. There's no protection, no guarantee, just coin, if you're lucky. Some clients pay, others don't. Some hurt you, some disappear. If you get pregnant, there's no doctor. If you get sick, there's no cure. If you scream, there's no one to hear you over the clatter of cartwheels and the hum of indifference. Society says you're immoral, but society offered you nothing else. And even the lucky women, the ones with steady homes, husbands with jobs, children who make it past infancy, they aren't resting either. They work, quietly, endlessly, managing every crumb, every rag, every sigh. They hold households together with frayed twine and raw palms. No holidays, no leisure, just the ticking of the clock and the scraping of pennies. But through all of this, somehow, they still comfort their children, sweep their doorsteps, and laugh. Sometimes, they share stories across laundry lines, trade soup bones and stolen recipes. They whisper warnings about bad men, bad milk, bad luck. They help each other birth babies. They carry water when one of them is sick. They loan scarves and salt and advice. These aren't women with time for romantic novels or grand adventures. They are women who survive. who make a miracle out of half a loaf of bread and a smile. And when they die, the city barely notices. But their daughters remember, and their neighbors do. And sometimes, someone writes down their name. In Victorian London, women carry the world, not with applause, but with bruised hands and unmatched grace. Let's imagine you've managed somehow to find work. Real, regular work. A blessing, by Victorian standards. But now you must contend with something more insidious than cold, more persistent than hunger, more common than cruelty. Disease. It doesn't knock. It seeps. Through the walls, the air, the water, the bread you just bit into. It waits quietly in the breath of the man next to you on the tram. It curls in the corner of your ceiling, next to the black mold and the peeling wallpaper. It hides in the public pump handle, the dirty cloth you wiped your hands on, the whispering cough you've learned to ignore. Let's start with the most popular villain, tuberculosis, though they call it consumption. It sounds elegant, like something whispered over lace collars, but it isn't. It's a slow, damp murder. You cough until your ribs ache. You cough blood into rags. Your appetite vanishes. Your cheeks hollow. And you keep coughing until eventually you stop. You probably know someone who has it. You might live with someone who has it. But in Victorian London, you don't stop working just because your lungs are disintegrating. You simply die standing. Then there's cholera, more dramatic. One minute you're walking to the bakery, and the next you're curled on the floor, vomiting, shaking, dehydrated to the point of collapse. It rides in through your water. Yes, the same water you use for tea, for soup, for washing your baby's face. It spreads faster than gossip. Entire streets fall silent overnight. The authorities chain the local pump, but it's always too late. Typhoid, scarlet fever, diphtheria, each has its own personality. None of them charming, all of them deadly, and all of them adore the poor. If you're sick, and you likely are, you'll try the usual things. Herbal tinctures passed down from your grandmother, a mustard poultice. Maybe you tie an onion around your neck. If that fails, and it will, you turn to laudanum, a Victorian staple. Laudanum, a pleasant mixture of opium and alcohol, sold freely, prescribed generously. You've got cramps? Laudanum. A headache? Laudanum. Your child won't stop crying? Laudanum. You're grieving? Double the dose. It won't save you, but it will make you forget you're dying. And then, of course, the doctors. They mean well. Sometimes. But modern medicine hasn't arrived yet. Germ theory exists, somewhere in the margins of scientific journals. But most physicians still believe in miasma, bad air, moral weakness, or cold floors as the cause of your suffering. If you're lucky, they bleed you. If you're not, they prescribe mercury or try surgery, with no gloves, no antiseptic, and a saw that's seen more bone than wood. You might fare just as well with the barber down the street, who cuts hair in the morning and limbs in the afternoon. The hospitals? Don't get your hopes up. They're crowded, underfunded, unventilated rooms soaked in vinegar and screams. The linens are never clean. The air smells of decay and regret. You share a bed, if you get one. The surgical tools are wiped on aprons between uses. You might survive your illness, only to die of the cure. A splinter can become a death sentence. A scraped knee might lead to gangrene. And childbirth? A lottery. Sometimes the prize is a child. Sometimes it's an infection. Sometimes it's silence. But the real terror lies in the ordinariness of it all. No one seems shocked when someone dies in their sleep, or on the street, or in the back room of the factory, folded over the looms. Death is expected, managed, quietly accepted like a rent payment or a cold winter. And yet, life goes on. People still boil water when they can. They scrub their hands raw with lye. They say prayers and carry charms. They open windows when the fog isn't too thick, and hope. Because even in a city that forgets your name, you remember your own. You try. You endure. You get up the next day and go to work, breathing shallowly, avoiding puddles, and pretending not to notice the pallor in your child's face. In Victorian London, sickness isn't an interruption. It's the background hum, the fog you live inside. And if you're still standing, still coughing, still waking up, it means, at least for now, you've outlived it. But the city is patient, and disease here never leaves. It just changes rooms. You're thirsty. Of course you are. You've been breathing soot for hours, your lips are dry, your throat feels like it's been sandpapered with coal dust, and your 1 cup of tea this morning did little more than warm your hands. Time for a drink. But this is Victorian London. And here, water is not your friend. It's a gamble, a riddle, a revolver with 1 round and a porcelain handle. Let's start with the Thames. You know it, you smell it, and on hot days, you can almost taste it in the air. The river is the pulsing, polluted artery of the city, and everything flows into it. Everything. Rotting vegetables, industrial waste, horse carcasses, human waste, dead dogs, and possibly dead people. And then, of course, you, the city's working poor, drink from it. Not directly, of course. That would be indecent. The water is filtered, they say, which means it's passed through a few layers of gravel, hope, and whatever moss they scraped off the side of the nearest building. The result? Slightly less chunky poison. And yet, it's your best option. If you're lucky enough to live in a building with a tap, that tap is shared. With neighbors, with strangers, with the rat that lives in the wall and probably knows how to turn it on. If not, you fetch water from a public pump. One of several dotting the street, each with its own reputation, its own taste, its own rumors of cholera. You might even recognize the name of your local pump from the newspaper, after the authorities trace a deadly outbreak back to its handle. Of course there's beer. Not the golden, frothy escape of a modern pub. No, this is small beer, weak, warm, flat. But it's been boiled. And that, in Victorian London, is reason enough to serve it to children. Bathing? That's adorable. You do it when you can. Maybe once a week if you're middle class. Once a month if you're not. Your bathtub is a tin bucket in the kitchen, and the same water might be used for laundry, dishes, or soaking your aching feet. Hygiene is a creative art. If you're sick, someone might boil herbs and make a poultice. More often, they just rub you with vinegar and hope for the best. There are public bathhouses, of course, some respectable, some less so. But even those come at a cost, and if you're poor, and you are, you might opt instead for a wash with rainwater, if it hasn't picked up too much soot on the way down. Eventually, Parliament reacts. Not because people are dying, mind you, but because the stench from the Thames grows so unbearable in the summer of 1858 that it drives lawmakers out of their own building. The Great Stink, they call it. It takes death to raise concern, but it takes inconvenience to spark change. And so, the city begins to build sewers. Slowly, quietly, as if ashamed of their usefulness. But for now, your reality remains unchanged. The pump, the bucket, the cloudy tea. The nagging knowledge that what you drink might be your undoing. You learn to live with it. You boil what you can. You pray before you sip. You listen for rumors. Don't trust the Broad Street pump, they whisper. Mrs. Avery's boy fell sick after drinking from the tap near the bakery. You pretend the tea tastes normal. You pretend the bucket in the corner doesn't smell strange, because pretending is survival. In Victorian London, hydration is a high-stakes game. Every glass a roll of the dice. Some live, some don't. And the city, wrapped in its fog and filth, doesn't care either way. It just watches and waits. Now, rest your thoughts. Let that bitter taste fade. We'll continue soon, as the story flows further into the alleys of survival and the price of simply being alive. You've tried honest work. You've risen with the soot, pushed your way through fog-choked streets, traded your hours for half-stale bread and aching joints, but it's not enough. The rent collector doesn't take good intentions. Hunger doesn't accept apologies. And the boots on your feet are about as waterproof as a colander. So you look at the streets again, not as a place to walk, but as a workplace. In Victorian London, crime isn't a moral failing. It's a career path. You start small. Everyone does. Maybe you're a dipper, a pickpocket with a nimble hand and an innocent face. You haunt the market, brushing gently against overcoats and coin purses, disappearing into the crowd before anyone realizes they've been lightened. There's no music like in Oliver Twist, just silence and cold fingers. If you're lucky, you sell your take to a fence, someone who knows how to move stolen goods without drawing the bobbies. If you're unlucky, you get caught. Or worse, caught by someone who doesn't bother calling the police. Victorian justice is often swift and rarely legal. If you're a woman, the game's different. You might start as a runner, delivering stolen goods between sellers. Maybe you run a twilight house, a safe drop point for thieves. You learn how to lie, how to vanish, how to make your shawl hide 100 secrets. Or maybe you go into business for yourself, selling half-rotten fruit or watered-down milk from a cart that you don't technically own. You shout louder than anyone else, drown out the cries of thief with tuppence a peach, and vanish before questions catch up. Some get bolder. Burglary, forgery, the 3-card Monty scam, played with such flair that by the time the mark realizes he's lost, you're halfway to Camden. And if you've really lost all other options, there's resurrection, body snatching. The fresh graves are easiest, soft dirt, less rot. You haul the body out, wrap it in burlap, and drag it to the back door of the nearest anatomy school. It's not noble, but it pays more than laundry ever will. Of course, every shadow comes with risk. Get caught, and you might be flogged, imprisoned, or branded. Transportation, being shipped off to a penal colony, is a possibility too. Australia, if you're lucky. Van Diemen's Land, if you're not. But punishment is just another job hazard, like soot in the lungs or broken fingers. And the police? They're there, in theory. But they're overworked, underpaid, and often look the other way, especially if their palms are properly greased. Bribery is a language everyone understands here. The law isn't justice. It's just a part of the game. Because in Victorian London, crime isn't the opposite of work. It is work. A different uniform, a different set of tools. But the same goal: stay alive, feed yourself, stay out of the workhouse, avoid becoming the body someone else might dig up next week. And truth be told, for many, it's the only work that hires. No questions asked, no references needed. Just desperation, opportunity, and a willingness to disappear into the fog. Now close your eyes. The night is thick. The footsteps behind you? Probably nothing. Probably. But we'll walk together into the next breath of the city's long, cold memory. In the next block. Let's say you've caught something. A cough that rattles in your chest. A fever that paints your thoughts in flickers. Or maybe your leg was kissed by a wagon wheel. Not hard enough to kill you, just enough to ensure you'll never walk without wincing again. It's time to see a doctor. Or something that passes for one. But this is Victorian London. Medicine is not science. It is theater. Performed with metal tools, mismatched bottles, and terrifying certainty. You don't go to a hospital. Oh no. Those are where people go to die loudly. They're overcrowded, underfunded, and smell like a mixture of wet bandages and hopelessness. The beds are shared, the floors aren't scrubbed, and the instruments are wiped on the surgeon's apron, if they're wiped at all. Your first stop is probably the chemist. A long counter of little brown bottles and promises. The cure for your ailment? Laudanum. A gentle blend of alcohol and opium, suitable for everything from toothaches to existential collapse. It won't heal you, but it'll make you stop caring. If you can't afford the chemist, there's always the barber surgeon. Yes, the man who shaves beards and amputates limbs in the same chair. If your infection's bad enough, he'll give you a choice. Lose the leg or lose your life. Anesthesia is a rag and a prayer. Antiseptic is a theory, one not widely accepted yet. And when the sawing starts, so does the screaming. You're handed a wooden stick to bite. You hold on to it like it's the only thing anchoring you to this world. Let's not even talk about childbirth. If you're a woman, bringing life into the world may take yours with it. No painkillers, no sterilized rooms, just shouting midwives, old cloth, and the hope that whoever catches the baby isn't too drunk to do it right. You go in with hope. You come out with a baby, or a death notice. Sometimes both. Medical books are filled with Latin, arrogance, and very little actual help. You may be prescribed bloodletting, leeches, or mustard plasters that burn more than they heal. Some doctors might suggest mild electrocution. Others will diagnose your melancholy as a uterus that wandered off looking for attention. And yet, somehow, people survive. Not because the system works, but because they know how to wait. You sip tea brewed with herbs you can't name. You keep still. You light a candle and breathe slow. Because every treatment carries risk, and every cure comes with teeth. You don't go to the doctor to be healed. You go because you've run out of other options. And sometimes, just sometimes, you walk back out on your own 2 feet. The fog is still there. The coughing in the alley hasn't stopped. And your neighbor's child looks worse today than yesterday. But you made it through another sick day. One more step through the grim, grinding march of survival. Rest now, just for a moment. The night waits outside, and the next breath of history is always darker than the last. Morning arrives, or at least, you think it does. You can't see the sun. No one really can. In Victorian London, the light doesn't rise so much as seep, slowly, reluctantly, through the thick, tarry fog. It's not the kind of morning that wakes you up. It's the kind that gently informs you are still alive, and that perhaps is enough. The smog hangs heavy, a velvet curtain soaked in soot and sorrow. It clings to your skin. It scratches your throat. You cough again. You never really stopped. The sound joins 1,000 others, rising in chorus across the rooftops like a choir of the condemned. Your clothes, despite your best efforts, smell permanently of damp coal and disappointment. You wipe your window. The cloth comes away black. You wash your hands. The water turns gray. You've long accepted this as normal. There is no fresh air here. Just a spectrum of filth, ranging from mildly offensive to potentially lethal. Still, you open the door. You step out. Because that's what people do here. They keep going. You cross streets lined with misery. You dodge carts, beggars, puddles of unknown depth, and the occasional corpse that someone politely covered with yesterday's newspaper. You listen to the city breathe, not like a living creature, but like an old boiler about to explode. And yet somehow you notice life. Not joy, exactly, but echoes of it. A boy chasing a hoop made from a broken barrel ring. A woman laughing, too loud for the morning, probably at a joke that doesn't deserve it. A man whistling, off-key, while dragging a handcart full of spoiled potatoes. There's still music here. Not the orchestrated kind. The kind that rises from cracks. From people too stubborn to fall completely silent. You find bread, not fresh, not warm, but bread. You find a bit of light. Not clean, but enough to see your own hands by. You find another hour, another afternoon, another chance not to die today. And that's the quiet triumph of this city. Victorian London didn't offer comfort. It offered continuity. Not hope, but the possibility of hope. Possibility. A chance to make it to the next moment, and maybe, if the fog lifts a little, glimpse something resembling meaning in all this soot-streaked chaos. Would you survive here? Let's be honest. Probably not. And that's okay. You live in a world with antibiotics, with indoor plumbing, with fire escapes and tenant rights and food that want to give you cholera unless you really try. You live with comforts unimaginable to the millions who trudge through these streets with holes in their shoes and lungs full of fog. But they survived. Not all of them, not most, but enough. They carried empire on their backs. They buried their children. They worked through pain. They laughed at death. And when it knocked, they sometimes had the audacity to laugh again. So, as this story settles to its end, and the night pulls its curtain around your ears, let yourself drift with a little gratitude. Not for their suffering, but for the reminder that humanity is a stubborn thing. It keeps breathing. Even when the air is poison, even when the light doesn't come, even when the history books forget its name, it keeps going. And so do you. Thank you for walking these foggy streets with me. Sleep well, dear listener, and may your dreams be warmer than London ever was. So now, let your eyes grow heavy as the past slips quietly into the shadows. Another chapter closes, another forgotten name remembered, and still the world turns. Quietly, slowly, just as it always has. Thank you for letting history whisper you to sleep tonight. From soot-stained alleys to faded palaces, you walked through time and survived. Until next time, rest well, dream strange. And remember, the past was never golden. but it makes a fine lullaby. Good night, traveler. You're safe now.